Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and I know, this is not Marvel Future Fight. What is going on? Well, I wanted to cover this game because it's brand new, at least globally, been released as an English version game. It's made by Netmarble, and I actually am having a lot of fun playing it. So all of those things combined usually makes for a game that I think I'll enjoy on some level and, with some kind of investment. At least for a while, and that's why we play games. So I wanted to get into it. I wanted to share it with you guys. Plus anime, if you like anime, even if you don't like anime, but if you like anime, this is a game based on 7 Deadly Sins. This is 7 Deadly Sins Grand Cross. It's a pretty short fight. Okay, so I want to show you guys this game. There's quite a few things that are unique about this game that are, I think, interesting about this game. Now, the first thing you'll notice from the combat that you're seeing, this is autoplay, this is some basic farming content, is that it is a turn-based game. So that is going to be a huge departure from what you're used to in Marvel Future Fight. However, for those of you that might watch content on the game at a later date in some form, you may be confused because other parts of the content in the game looks very much like Marvel Future Fight, with the camera angle sort of behind the character and the character running around through this three-dimensional world. So I will cover that, but that is more so for just getting around the world. It's not for the combat. The combat is turn-based. Some really gorgeous graphics. There's some really gorgeous sort of animations and sort of ultimate moves, kind of like tier 3 skills in Marvel Future Fight. And there's actually a lot to appreciate if you are a fan of the anime. Now, if you're not a fan of the anime, I think you can still get quite a bit out of the game. We'll talk about the cons as well. I'm not just gonna, gush over the game. But among the pros for the game are the fact that even if you have not ever watched the anime or read the manga, for example, that the anime is based on, you can actually experience the whole story, or at least not maybe not the whole story, but you can experience the entirety of the story up to, I believe, the end of the first season. But you do get the whole story of that first season's worth of anime, worth of manga chapters, just by playing the game. So they haven't cut anything out from the looks of it, and it's all stitched together with cutscenes, with text saying what's happening. There's no voice acting, but that's pretty much the only thing missing. There's all the music, there's sound effects for the battles and things like that. There's lots of really cool animations and blowing up. So it's almost like you watch the anime yourself as you're going through, and you'll also get cutscenes and loading screens where you see sort of images that are sort of out of the manga colorized or out of the anime colorized. So there is a lot of rich backstory. So I think that's something that you can really appreciate about a game like this, and I was actually really impressed with it. I don't have to read through the stuff because I've already watched the anime, but that is something that's cool for people that enjoy that and just don't have the time to watch the anime. You kind of get 2 in 1, which I think is an unusual thing for a mobile game, to be that loyal to the original content. Now, on top of being a turn-based game, which some of you guys may not like, it is also a gacha RPG type game. So this is sort of the three-dimensional RPG type thing that you would expect from a game like Marvel Future Fight. It's a shame, I will say it is a shame that the whole game isn't like this, because I would die. I would love for the game to, I wouldn't die, but I would die. I would love for the game to be like this through and through, and to allow you to use your skills on screen and stuff. But on top of being a turn-based game, it is also a gacha. So I think those are the 2 biggest hurdles for Marvel Future Fight players to overcome: the fact that it's turn-based and the fact that it is a gacha game. Gacha meaning that you don't get to specifically choose every single character that you get. For the most part, you are gambling with the premium currency that you get via doing different things, and then you will get random characters, and then you will use those characters. So it's in a way, it is like Marvel Contest of Champions. However, I will say this, and I don't have a lot of experience with this game because it was released almost a year ago. It was released about 9 or 10 months ago in Japan. So the Japanese version has been out for a while. I never played the Japanese version, so I'm just really learning about the game for the first time yesterday, because it was released yesterday. And there are players that have had 8 months of experience. But from everything that I've read, and you can go ahead and read it online yourself if you're curious and you want to see it for yourself and you want to read for yourself, all of the testimonials by players have indicated that this is a much more generous gacha game. And I know it's a weird thing to say, like it's generous, but it's a gacha game, because all the gacha mechanics, they have rates, so there's a chance, right? There's only a 3% chance to get SSR. SSR basically stands for the rarest type of character. But actually, it turns out 3% is a pretty high rate. I know that sounds crazy, But like, for example, in Marvel Future Fight, there's less than 1% chance to get a CTP. So if you kind of think about it that way, it's actually not that bad. And you can see there's quite a few within the 3%. So it does sort of ruin your chances to get a very specific character. You're getting into the decimal points here if you want specifically this guy or specifically that guy. But on top of that, on top of having a pretty generous starting percentage, they have other mechanics. I don't want to get into the details of it, but basically they have other mechanics built in to actually allow you to later on choose the characters that you want. So there is some sort of combination of styles of game. So you have, for example, this shop here, and so whenever I pull, and I haven't actually spent any money on this game yet, you can see I have a first purchase bonus there active because I haven't yet spent any money. I might spend a couple of dollars, but I don't think I'm going to be getting crazy with this game, and I recommend that you try and play it, you know, completely free to play for a while, even if you are usually a spending player. But for example, when I pull multiples of the same character, which I have already done because there's just not that many characters in the game right now, which is also another reason why it's a good time to start playing. I mean, it's a good time to start playing because the global release was yesterday, so you're brand new, fresh in the server, but also as you can see, there's just not that many characters. I already own pretty much half of the characters in the game, and I already own some of the best characters in the game, and some of the best characters in the game are given to you for free through the main storyline. So there is a lot of mechanics involved, especially if you start now, that make it easy for you to catch up and stay competitive for now as a free-to-play player, but also to collect most of the characters anyways. Now, if you pull doubles of a character, you know, in other gacha games, you get like a small reward. In this one, I think they've done a really good job where they give you these coins, and then you use the coins that you can convert those coins. You can see I already have 10 gold coins from, you know, pulling repeats of sort of gold characters, super rare characters, and then I have 33 silver coins pulling repeats of rare characters. I can use those coins. For example, I can already use 30 of my coins. Again, totally free to play. I've been playing for a day, and I already have that many characters plus enough duplicate characters to straight up purchase other characters that I don't already own. So it has obviously those negative aspects to it, being a gacha game, being a turn-based game if that's not your style, but I do think this game does a lot right, and it's, you know, really amazing animation. Like, I really like the animation, I really like the music. You can actually change the in-game music. There's a lot of cute little like netmarble details in this game that I think a lot of people are gonna, you know, appreciate. So I can go ahead here and change the music, and that does something. I literally picked the worst possible song. And then there's, you know, cute little side quests. There's like a cooking mini game that you can do here, and you actually will have to cook in some situations. So I'm going to add my ingredients here and try to make something. I actually don't think I can make anything right now, but let's add some eggplant. Okay, no, we'll try butter. Okay, we don't have any of the rice, so we can't actually make anything right now. Anyways, another thing you're going to notice, I haven't showed you guys too much gameplay, but another thing you guys are going to notice is I'm using a mouse. I'm actually playing this on an emulator. I'm using BlueStacks. I'm not sponsored or anything like that. But you can play this, of course, on your phone. It's available on iOS and Android. For iOS users, here's the thing. For iOS users, you're going to have to play it portrait, which is really annoying, but that is how the game is designed. It's designed to be played portrait, which some people like. I honestly don't like. I hate it. But for Android users, you can use something called, what's it called? Rotation control. And you can basically force any game, any app into landscape. So I encourage you to use rotation control if you want to play this game and you hate the portrait view. I'm not obviously playing it on my phone now, but you can play it on landscape, and the game actually looks beautiful on landscape, although it is natively designed, or at least natively installed on your phone as a portrait-based game. I would love for netmarble in the future to sort of, you know, address this publicly, or not publicly, but maybe, you know, give players the option of turning it landscape. You can see that there are black lines on either side, and so it's not completely filled out on some screens, but for the most part it is, and it does end up being filled out. So let's, for example, I'm going to cover this floor here. I'm just grinding out some XP for these characters. Fine, it doesn't matter. But you'll see that most of the screens, that mean you can't really tell that it's not a landscape game, and it plays really well on an emulator. The other reason why I'm bringing up emulation, the game looks gorgeous and it's not on my phone. That's a biggie there. But the other thing that I want to mention is the fact that these types of games generally have a lot of grinding. I mean, you're probably used to grinding if you play Marvel Future Fight, but when I say grinding, I mean like grinding, like lots and lots of grinding. So, and especially if you want to be free to play, which is what I encourage you to do, an emulator makes it easier to play those grindy games because you can kind of set it and forget it. This game already has things in place like, you know, setting a certain amount of auto plays So you can set 5 or you can set 10 and then just walk away, do your dishes, go cook, go walk your dog, and come back, and it will be running through over and over and over. The last thing I want to talk about as far as the pros go, and then we'll talk about some cons, but the last thing I want to get into as far as the pros go is that on top of being a turn-based game, they've introduced an extra mechanic at the bottom here that I'm going to turn it off auto to show you guys in more detail. Initially, I hated this idea, but now I actually really like it. It adds an extra layer of depth. It adds an extra layer of sort of strategy and complication. You saw it there when 2 of the cards combined into 1. Basically, these cards at the bottom represent my 3 characters' skills. There is an RNG element, which is not good, but the RNG is basically which cards show up. You will always get an ultimate card when you fill up your ultimate meter by doing regular attacks. As you can see there, I've got bands, ultimate attack ready. But essentially what you do is you choose the order in which you want to, you can choose who you're targeting, but you choose the order in which you want to do the moves, rather than having to deal with what a lot of other turn-based games do, which is introducing turn meter. Turn meter, or like character speed, is a really overpowered mechanic in turn-based games, because who would have thought in a game that's turn-based, if you get your turn first, you're going to be stronger than other characters. So oftentimes the meta in the meta in any turn-based game in some way has to revolve around, or it has to respect turn meter. Turn meter being like, you know, the fastest characters will become the meta, or the characters that can buff their turn and buff their speed, or buff their allies' speed and turn meter will become the meta, or players that can nerf or reduce or slow down the enemy team, thereby reducing their turn meter. And turn meter is just a really boring way of playing a game, because it's sort of just like wrestling someone for the dice in a board game. I just want to throw the dice and play. I don't really care who goes first, but if you've ever played Monopoly, if you go first, you have a gigantic advantage. So this game does away with that stupid turn meter crap. You don't have turn meter. You might have character speed in some way. I don't really know. You do have like the first turn order when the fight first begins, and it's calculated by your team's total power, but that's completely different. So instead of having turn meter, what they do is essentially they just give you infinite amount of time here. Obviously it's turn-based, but you basically choose who you want to attack first, and you choose what attacks they do. But you know, incidentally, you can actually have negative or positive synergy based on which attacks you do in which order. So for example, let's say I was going to attack this guy, and I'm not going to do enough damage with his ultimate move to kill him, hypothetically speaking. But I have another move here from Arthur that will buff all of my character's attacks. So it sees increase the base stats of all allies by 20% for 2 turns. So rather than doing this move first and this move second, and you have to set all of your moves before you go, this would be bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to buff first to buff his attack, then I'm going to have him attack, and then whoever's left over is going to get hit again by him. And so it actually adds, I realized that it actually adds a lot of depth to the game, because not only can you do things like this, you can sort of build in combos, but you can also focus all of your attacks on one character. And the more a character attacks, the faster they build up their ult. So if you have one really strong character, you can focus their attacks to build up their ult to get to it faster. And then once you build up your ult with these dots here, the game will automatically give you the ult card on the next turn. So as long as I use one of his attacks here for King, he will get his ult on the next turn. And then I will be able to use it on that turn if I don't die and if I have enemies available. Obviously, in this case, we killed him, so there's no more enemies available. But you can see there that we got to 5 dots. Oh, you know what? Actually, we are going to get this. Okay, so you guys are going to be able to see the big pea flower one more time. Dope. So I actually, you know, initially when I saw this, I was like, man, this is dumb. This is just RNG. And I actually thought that this was a way for them to sell sort of overpowered cards. There are gacha, there are like, you know, monetization. There's some predatory monetization that we'll talk about in a second. But you know, upon further consideration of this system, I actually think it's really clever, and I actually think I enjoy this more than just a traditional turn-based game where you have to look at turn meter and you have to really pay attention to turn meter to, you know, realize what you need to do in what order. Now, here's another example of, you know, making a mistake. We have this skill from King that has petrification, but petrification obviously turns them to stone. But if they get attacked after their turn to stone, before their turn, then the effect wears off. And I've made this mistake countless times. Basically, if you don't put this as the last skill that you use here, and if you put any kind of attack after it on that same character, then you will basically negate your own skill. So there's literally ways of basically screwing yourself over by not paying attention. So it rewards strategy, it rewards players who understand the game more. And so even though there is an element of RNG in terms of what cards you get, cards being what skills, what attacks you can do, there is also a heavy element of skill in terms of combining cards and in terms of comboing cards in the right order, and then also in terms of building up certain characters' ultimate skills, like the Pea Flower, in order to get specific effects out. So there, I would have fossilized him. I would have petrified him, but he's dead, and he's also dead. Okay, so we can't do anything. The other thing that you're noticing is that when two cards of the same kind line up together, they will combine. I'm going into a little bit too much detail, but I'll show you here really quickly. You can also drag them to combine them manually. So here I can combine them, and it actually buffs the effect. It's really cool. So there's actually a lot of depth to this system. I was surprised with it, and I actually think that this is one of the biggest selling points of this game for those people that like, or can tolerate turn-based games, but like the idea of skill and strategy being the main determinator of the outcome of battle. So that is something that I did really learn to appreciate about the game over playing it for the last day, and I really like. Now, what do I not like about the game? Well, besides the fact that it's gacha, besides the fact that it's turn-based, I generally don't like those two things in games, and that's why I usually don't stick with games, even though they have a really good IP, like Marvel Strike Force. I just couldn't get into it long enough because it's turn-based. I'm gonna, give this one a try, but that is definitely still a big negative for me. But that, and also the fact that it's portrait. The last thing that I really think is a question mark for this game is the additional sort of customization that they have. So on top of having your heroes, and we'll just go over here to this guy, you have a whole whack of different customization options. Now this is good from the sense of having depth and having a lot to do in the game, but it can be bad in the sense of stalling your progress and slowing you down and making the game just this like really, really crazy grind where you're not really feeling progress. So you have like your regular enhance button where you level them up. You can just add like XP chips basically. You then have evolve where you can change their sort of rarity and buff them, which is also pretty straightforward. You just collect these items. These items don't seem to be too rare. Gold might be an issue, but it's whatever. But then we get into other things. Awakening seems to be really expensive. And it seems to have a decent effect, a decent impact on their damage, so I'll have to, monitor this. But then we get into some other things here, like Closet. Netmarble loves to sell uniforms for games. If you ever played things like Lineage, they really like to do this kind of stuff. And the thing is, some of these outfits will actually have different stats. So that is something that can be a really big sort of red flag for these types of games. And there was actually one thing that I found in-game that blew my mind. I want to show you guys really quickly because this is the good and the bad. It's not always good, but essentially in the shop, there is, I gotta find it. There we go, I found it. Okay, so they're selling these limited edition costumes for these characters. And keep in mind, the game just came out, okay? So you've got the Honor and Scars Holy Knight Set 1. So there could be a Holy Knight Set 2 or 3. This has a 12-day timer, and it says this item. If you're the people out there who don't have Holiday Lady Deadpool, you know these words well. This item may be sold again after the selling period ends. There's no guarantee that this could be sold again. How much are our lucky contestants going to pay for these lovely costumes, these cosmetics, right? This is just supposed to be a difference of look, right? It's supposed to change the way your character looks. Check this out. $55 Canadian. Are you serious? And look, bonus effects upon registering. Registering is equipping. You get 180 attack. Again, I don't know how much that is, but still. You get pierce rate, you get crit chance, you get crit damage. I don't even own the character, but you can see this is crazy money. You can see how this can easily get out of hand. So this kind of gives me some bad vibes. Of course, the gacha stuff gives me some bad vibes, and turn-based stuff is not my favorite. But overall, I think this game does offer, beautiful visuals, the really interesting tie to the story where you can basically, you don't even have to, you can skip watching the anime and you'll get that entire story. Plus, the other good thing about this game is that it seems to be healthy. It seems to have a pretty big player base. I've been watching YouTube videos. I've been sort of looking at the number of views that have been popping up lately, because everyone and their grandmother is making a 7 deadly, well, me myself included, 7 deadly sins Grand Cross, you know, release date video, you know, re-rolling guide, review guide, etc. And the views do seem to be healthy. They seem to be pretty, you know, uptrending for a game that's been out for almost a year in Japan. You sometimes don't expect that, but there seem to be a lot of global, i.e. English, you know, North American and European players who were waiting and who were excited about this game. Originally in Japan, I believe the game got almost 7 million pre-registrations before it even came out in Japan, which is pretty crazy. And keep in mind, because the game has been out, there's still a lot more content that the Japanese server has that we don't have, that we will get. So this game easily has, I would say, 2 years worth of content minimum before it even starts to slow down. I do question, the last thing is, I do question what they're going to do after they release characters like Merlin and Escanor, because those two characters are basically like the daddy and the waifu of the game. Merlin is super hot, and Escanor is like mega daddy with the gigantic axe. Once those characters are released, once they let those super popular characters out, how are they going to entice us? There he is. How are they going to entice us to continue? You know, how are they going to entice the whales to continue spending, and how are they going to get characters excited for the game? Because I've watched the anime for 2 seasons. I know the manga is a little bit further ahead, but there's not that much. You know, this is not Marvel. There are not thousands of characters to pull information and to pull lore and you know, characters from. So that is a little bit of a warning sign for me as well. But I think for now, you'll have a blast playing this game for at least a few months. And you're starting off right at the ground floor, right at the basement in the foundation, like everybody else. So, with that being said, thanks for watching this video. Thanks for supporting me when I make other content. And I will see you in the next one. Take care.